ask yourself, do I like to get high? Do I like to feel euphoric? Do I like my mind altered? Well, I think most of us are fairly intelligent, and we would answer no to these questions. We are here today to talk about Measure 91, which, if it would pass, would legalize recreational marijuana. The American Lung Association says that marijuana, and I will quote, is similar to chemicals that occur naturally in the brain, and marijuana disrupts the function of these good chemicals and impairs short-term memory and motor coordination, slowing reaction time. Of course, this more than doubles the impaired driver from being in a motor vehicle crash. And there's no measurement of what we can have in our system legally with marijuana like there is with alcohol and the breathalyzer test and the blood alcohol draw. The American Lung Association also says that there are 33 cancer-causing chemicals in marijuana, and it has 4 times the tar as in cigarettes. And as we know, most often, marijuana is not smoked with a filter, even causing it to be more carcinogenic and harmful to the lungs. Cannabis also increases the heart rate from 20 to 100%. And we all know, even with a healthy heart, like most of us have here, this can go on for up to 3 hours. And so even with our healthy hearts, this would not be a good thing. With ballot measure 91, cannabis is not to be sold to those under 21. Duh. Because in youth, it even is more dangerous and it can cause neurological impairment. Colorado was probably Oregon's poster child because they legalized marijuana. But there's been so many problems there. They thought they would get this huge tax revenue. However, the banks in Colorado are not giving the stores any accounts. So everything's on a cash basis. Now, do you think that some of this might be pilfered under the table a bit? That's why it's not getting taxed. Some of the other problems in Colorado since the legalization of marijuana have been increased homelessness. Also, increased incidence of children being admitted to the emergency department with overdose of marijuana. Also, with easier access, they are seeing a 50% higher use of marijuana in teenagers. So we'll see a lot of neurological impairment, and also that is medical plus the the neurological impairment plus the overdoses. There are no quality controls, and cannabis is put in such items as lip balm. It's called lip bliss. It's also, of course, in brownies and cookies, as we well know. And one of the later things they're doing is infusing it in gummy bears. They also have Pop-Tarts that are in a box very similar to our Pop-Tarts that are on our grocery shelves today. Washington and Colorado have varying regulations. In Washington, you cannot grow it at home, and in Colorado, you're not supposed to have over an ounce on your person. Well, Oregon is really going beyond. We will be allowed to have 4 plants, a half a pound of dried marijuana, 1 1 pound of edible marijuana, like in the gummy bears and the Pop-Tarts, and 72 ounces of marijuana-infused liquids. There's a company in Colorado called Blue Mountain, and they have a party bus that goes around and parks in front of the bars. And what they do is they heat the marijuana, and they say, come on down, it's free. And they smoke it in a bong.
Jan, with that, I do have to stop you. The time is up. 5 minutes has gone through.
Oh, I didn't know you had to stop us.
5 minutes.
Oh, sorry.
But thank you. Take a seat. I'd like to now introduce Wyatt King.
Oh, okay.
Wyatt, the time begins now.
Thank you, Mr. Amigos. Since the start of the marijuana prohibition in 1937, fear has driven the ban of a natural plant humanity had cultivated for thousands of years. We have a chance before us to repeal this failed prohibition, yet those in favor of the status quo continue their old tradition of pushing that fear. Legalization is Oregon's best hope for ensuring our prosperity. Legalization will take marijuana out of the hands of drug dealers who would sell to our kids, and instead regulate it and turn it into a source of funding for our schools and our police. Those in favor of holding on to the status quo will warn that Measure 91 is toothless and has too many problems. But Measure 91 is thorough and well written, endorsed by a wide range of credible experts, and even viewed as overly strict by many, especially in comparison to our regulations on alcohol and tobacco. We know we can't please every person, but we can't let that stop us from taking needed action. The immediate impacts of marijuana legalization include increased freedom, as thousands of Oregonians become free to use a natural herb, free to make the same choices that we all make, to have a beer or a burger, to skip exercising for just one night, or to watch TV instead of cleaning your room. Freedom to take a break in the way that we see fit, without harming anyone else. Our state and local governments will see a boost to their budgets anywhere from $17 to $80 million a year in tax revenue. Using the state's high-end estimate of $40 million, which is also the low-end estimate of an outside economic impact review, and the bill's stated allocation of 40% to schools, 25% to substance abuse programs, 15% to the Oregon State Police, and 20% to local police departments. This means that Oregon will receive from legalization every year $14 million towards our education system, or enough to give every teacher in Oregon $500 a year to spend on classroom supplies. $8.75 million to substance abuse programs, or enough to put $180 towards every person in treatment for substance abuse. $5.25 million to the Oregon State Police Department. That's enough to give every single employee in that department a $4,000 a year raise. And $7 million towards our local police departments, or an extra $40,000 in their budget every year. Not only will we get millions, but legalization will save millions as well. If we only save half of the over $15 million that we currently spend enforcing marijuana possession laws, that's an additional $25 million in our justice system, freeing up time and money for our police, our prosecutors, and our judges to focus on far more serious and dangerous crimes. The legalization of marijuana, besides being our surest way to protect our citizens, and on top of being a liberty that will provide a financial windfall to our state, will also strengthen Oregon's economy by providing new jobs in new industries, not only in the production and selling of marijuana, but in the often overlooked fraternal twin sister of marijuana, hemp. Hemp is a similar plant to marijuana, but without the THC that causes the high. It's easy to grow and can be used to make over 25,000 different products. Hemp is the strongest natural fiber available and lasts longer than both cotton and wood. It's also a carbon-neutral biofuel and can provide a complete source of protein, cheap and sustainably grown, for every hungry Oregonian. Hemp can be used to make rope, cloth, medicine, paper, plastics, dynamite, and even supercapacitors better than the ones made from graphene. It can be used to make long-lasting, and cheap to produce homes and cars.
And Wyatt, on that note, thank you very much. Please take a seat. Jan, this will be the first rebuttal. Once again, you will have 2 minutes to go through that time period. I would recommend being as concise as possible and, again, responding to the wonderful points that you both have made.
Okay. Well, I think the pros are not so pro. There would be money given to the state police. However, the state DA's office and the state sheriff's office does not support this amendment. They are going to give, I think it's 20% for mental health. Well, now, why do you think they're going to give 20% to mental health? Because, as I said, it increases the neurological problems in children. They've also seen increase of suicide in Colorado. Someone jumped off the bridge that was high on marijuana. There was one father that ate it in candy, not knowing how potent it was because there's no regulation. He shot his wife and his children. I have a brother that lives in Colorado, and I recently visited him, and he said he voted for the measure, but he wishes now he wouldn't because it has presented so many problems. So I think we should not sit on the fence for this problem. I think we should take a stand and vote no on Measure 91, November 4th at the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you, Jan. I'd like to now introduce Wyatt again. Wyatt, you will have 2 minutes to answer the rebuttal as well as the opening statements. Please be, and as I would recommend, as I did to Jan, please be as concise as possible when you're going through this.
So Jan, you bring up some excellent points. There are definitely risks involved with the legalization of marijuana. We have to be careful about those risks. But I would say that despite our inability to accurately test stoned impairment in the field, we are training more and more cops that are trained to notice the symptoms of stoned drivers and be able to correct them. Jan points out that studies have shown an actual 1.75 increase in a stoned driver's impairment compared to that of a sober driver. But at the same time, I would point out that the level of impairment of somebody with a 0.08 blood alcohol content is over 20-fold compared to that of a sober driver. So yes, there are dangers, but compared to other dangers that we are already comfortable and familiar with, they're pretty benign. The primary fear of legalization is that it will lead to easier access and increased use for children. Studies showing teen susceptibility to addiction to marijuana rightly cause alarm, especially combined with the fact that studies have shown an 8-point decrease in IQ for teens who habitually use it. Nothing is more important than safeguarding our children, which is exactly why I am in favor of legalization. It is far harder for kids to get booze currently than it is for them to get weed. If you know somebody who smokes, you have access to it. Whereas with alcohol, if your parents do their job and lock up their liquor cabinets, it's pretty dang hard. Legalizing marijuana with sensible regulations will undercut the black market, putting drug dealers out of business until it's as hard for kids to get weed as it is for them to get alcohol. And taking the pot profits away from drug dealers will also mean reduced access to other drugs, because the true gateway effect in marijuana is that teens and youth go to drug dealers to get it. And at that time, they can be pitched cocaine and heroin and ecstasy and methamphetamines. It's by legalization that we will protect our kids.
Thank you, Wyatt. Please take a seat. Jan, I'd like to reintroduce you for closing statements. You'll have 3 minutes. We'll let you go through on the last word, or we'll try to keep it close to that 3-minute marker.
Thank you. So it's proposed that New York State of Oregon will make 17 to 40 and they can hardly enforce the alcoholism in adults as well as teenagers. So I'm not sure that they're going to do any better job with marijuana. Probably one of my biggest fears having grandchildren is that it's so easy with the gummy bears. We try to protect our children from them not having taken candy from strangers on the street. But a gummy bear is enticing to a child. They don't know what they're getting, and it could lead to neurological impairment or death. Wyatt said it was harder to get booze than marijuana, but I think with the lenient status in this bill, where you can have 4 plants, half a pound of dried marijuana, a pound of edibles, and 72 ounces of infused, it's a little hard for the parent that is taking this so-called legal drug to keep it all locked up like you would a stash of booze. They could go in the backyard, pick a few leaves, and dry their own. So, in final, I really feel that you should consider all the pros and cons, and I feel there's a lot more cons to this measure than pros. So, vote no on Measure 91. Thank you.
Now I'd like to go ahead and introduce Wyatt again. Wyatt, you'll have 3 minutes to go through on your closing remarks. Beginning now.
This election, we have a choice. We can continue the status quo by waiting in the rear of legalization, or we can lead it. Those who would continue the status quo, those who would have us timidly tiptoe into change, say that too much is uncertain and that we need more time. They use fear to make us doubt our reason in hopes of delaying our action. But we know that legalization is the best way to protect our citizens. We know that we can keep our children safe by undercutting the black markets and by driving them out of business. We know that the risks and dangers of marijuana are demonstratively less than those more familiar and more comfortable dangers than alcohol and tobacco. And we know that the impossibility of perfection in any endeavor cannot keep us from striving towards what is right, nor the fear of failure keep us from taking needed action. We see the injustices of prohibition on our fellow citizens, and we see the need to give them the freedom that we all deserve. But most, we see the millions of dollars currently going towards drug cartels and drug dealers and gangs. And we know that those millions could be used to fund our schools and our police if we but reach out and take them. And now we have realized the potential of legalization to bolster and strengthen Oregon's economy with the creation of new industries and new jobs. With open eyes and clear minds, we envision the creation of a growth of a new sector in Oregon's agriculture. And that infrastructure and expertise leading Oregon to leverage the new expanding market of hemp into a farming sector that leads the nation and contributes to a strong and prosperous Oregon for generations to come. Yet the benefits of this irresistible tide of change can only be realized if Oregon acts and acts quickly. Only if we are in a preeminent position in the hemp industry can we capture the lion's share of that market and cement our hold on it when it takes off. We can't wait. We can't allow Oregon to drift in the tide of legalization. We must take on this risk and face this challenge to reap its rewards for all of Oregon. We Oregonians are a state of pioneers, come from revolutionaries, born from immigrants and settlers. We are no strangers to overcoming danger, and we will no more let fear stop us now than we have ever let it before. Vote yes on 91. Thank you.
Now, if we could have a round for our debaters. Thank you, guys. Go ahead and take a seat. Do we want to open it up to questions? Do we have time today?
Sure. Right? I mean, yeah.
So, on Wyatt's comments, you talked about, new jobs, new careers, and I understand the whole teaching your kids right from wrong. I get that. But what impact does it have on employers? one question. My other question is, you talked about, new jobs, new careers, but you really directed towards the processing of hemp and the use of the roads. And so my understanding of this bill is has no impact on hemp because hemp's already produced. They use that for roads. They use it for shoes. The kids get the little bracelets, and that's all made out of hemp. So how does this legalization of this bill play into that hemp business when that's already in production? Does that make sense of my question? So there's two separate things. It seems that you're talking about legalizing it to have this business, but this business is already in existence without legalizing the recreational use and production of marijuana.
Well, as far as the impact on employers, private employers will still be, of course, able to make their own decisions. There will be quite the stigma on people who smoke marijuana, and so more employers will be more likely to allow someone who uses recreationally to have a job in their company. Most public employees are already required to be drug tested, and I would assume that most of those will remain jobs that you can't be high on, like police and firemen. The one interesting effect will be to see what the legislation comes out for minor public jobs, ones that aren't important but are still funded by not as important, but still funded by taxpayer dollars. And I could see that becoming a contentious issue, but a minor one at the same time.
So do you think employers would, sorry I interrupted you, employers would take the money that's generated, say it's passed and you said all of this money goes to the state, would your employer have to use some of that money to regulate its employees now with more drug testing, more monitoring of their work staff because of this bill?
Publicly or privately?
Either publicly or privately. As an employer, I'm hiring a new generation. So the money that the state gets from this bill, I would be out that much more money just by the monitoring of my staff, right?
Well, publicly, before any of the 40%, 20%, 15% revenue is split off, the bill has to sustain itself. And so money from the tax is first used towards the regulation and enforcement of the bill. Privately, it would be on the employer. If they wanted to spend money to do additional testing, they could. If they didn't want to test or only test for specific things, it would be their prerogative. Back to the hemp question. So there is currently a $580 million market, but I won't say a number, almost all of it is exported from foreign countries, the leading one being China. Let's see, I think Canada currently makes $500 million on exporting hemp, and 90% of what they export is to the United States. And so there is a large hemp market in the United States currently, but its similarity to marijuana and marijuana's current legal status has deterred any farmers from growing it. There are actually, there was a bill passed in 2009 that was supposed to encourage the development of the hemp infrastructures, but farmers have still shown reluctance to do anything because marijuana is illegal on a state and federal level. Recently, I think it was the DEA and the Department of Agriculture released a new memo saying that there would be a special licensing program where farmers and universities could apply to have specific federal allotments for hemp. But other than that, hemp is currently illegal to grow in the United States. Oh yeah, we import a ton of it.
Bracelets with it all the time. Anyway.
We can sell it, we can buy it, we can eat it, we can wear it, we can do whatever we want with it except grow it.
Do we have any other questions?
And Jen, would you like a chance?
So in fairness, I'd like to ask a question to Jan then. All right. So, Jan. I wish I had one for you, Wyatt, as I got one. So, Jan, we've already gone through a period of prohibition. We've seen the effects of it. It caused our economy to go through one of the worst sessions we've ever gone through because of the fact that we were using so much money towards the police, towards the government officials, towards so many other avenues rather than just utilizing it for a revenue source. Is this argument for the no-sayers just another opportunity to say no to change rather than embracing what could change our economy to, again, one of the strongest in the nation?
Well, it may in the long run help the economy, but I think it's going to still take a lot of money to regulate and draw blood alcohol, or you can take your child for free down to the police station and see if their blood alcohol is high, or to see if they have marijuana in their urine. But there's no criteria of a level, and so someone can say, well, I smoked marijuana 2 weeks ago, because it stays up to 6 weeks in your system. And even with someone that had a criteria of you can't work if you have marijuana in your system. And I think it's going to take a lot of monitoring. And I think we're just too premature in this until there's a monitoring way to see how much. Like someone like me, I can drink a half a beer and I'm like, woo, So how much gummy bears would it take for me versus someone that drinks alcohol daily?
Great response. That was good. Begs a question to Wyatt. Sorry, I have to. So, Wyatt, you've brought some incredible figures to the table. Just like Colorado and Washington brought incredible figures to the table. And to Jan's point, they're incredible figures. At what point are we allowing those figures to affect, one, our morality as a nation and as a group, that will affect our kids, our atmosphere, as well as our culture, so that we can be more prosperous? And two, yes, we are most definitely pioneers, and we Oregonians have shown that we are pioneers for the future. However, are we jumping off a cliff rather than stepping down the stairs?
Could you reiterate the gist of the first question?
Most definitely. So, are we sacrificing our morality as a group, as a nation, as a culture, to open up ourselves to what we've seen bring down several nations in Europe, so that we can hopefully, with those figures, again, hopefully, with those figures, become profitable?
Morality, like beauty, is often in the eye of the beholder. And so some persons might say that yes, we are very definitely selling out our morality to get a little bit of revenue. Others that look at the fact that there are 0 recorded marijuana deaths, the fact that its impairment is very, very slight compared to that of alcohol, or the fact that driver fatalities, violent crimes are all down in Colorado. And there are just as many sources saying that teen use is down as teen use is up. And so that's a tough one. The answer for you is going to be different than the answer for me or for Nancy. It just depends on who's taking a look at it. I feel that the majority of Americans think that it's something that should be left to the person who's doing it or not doing it.
And just to go off of that point, what you just said is that you feel that each of us should vote based on how we feel towards the subject, not towards the revenue. Oh, sorry. Improper question. Thank you.